Today I'm going to demonstrate cooking methods. Cooking methods are divided into two groups: moist cooking methods, where we use water as our cooking medium, and dry cooking methods, where we use oil and fat as our cooking medium. The moist methods of cooking are used for our harder grains and also for our tougher pieces of meat, and we boil things like rice, we boil eggs, we steam fish and chicken and our vegetables, green and yellow, and we use a combination moist method, which is pot roasting or fricassee for small pieces of meat, pot roasting for large pieces of beef or lamb. The dry methods of cooking, there are three of those. That is to saute, which is to fry in a very small amount of fat, such as mushrooms or onions. Then we have shallow fat frying, where the oil is about 1 centimeter deep, used for fricadelles or chops or steak. And then deep fat frying, which we use for fritters, chips, fried chicken, etc. Those are the methods that I will be demonstrating today. I'm going to use a pressure cooker to cook sampan beans, crushed maize, and sugar beans. Remember that you have to wash them very, very well and soak them overnight if at all possible, and then we are going to put them into the pressure cooker. Now, these are the sampan beans, which have been sorted, washed, and soaked, and I'm just going to pour the water off. Place the sampan beans in the pressure cooker. Add just enough water to cover the beans and the samp, whatever cereal, whether it's whole wheat or sampan beans, or whether it's beans on their own, you only just cover with water, remembering that the water does not evaporate. So you don't need the large quantities of water that you would use if you were boiling it on the stove. The other pointer is, do not add the salt before you start the cooking process, because salt is inclined to prevent the beans and the samp from softening as they should. So the salt is added for flavor once the cooking process is over. Place the lid on the pressure cooker and clamp it shut. Put it on high heat and wait for the steam to start escaping through the valve before we start controlling the pressure with the toggle. The steam is escaping from the valve of the pressure cooker, indicating that there's no air left in the pot. Turn the temperature down to low, 1 or 2, and place the toggle on the top of the pressure cooker. Now it will start to build up pressure, and we will leave it on for about 30 minutes, and the beans and the samp should be soft. When the pressure cooker time is over, you must not remove the toggle without first cooling down the pot. We do this to release the pressure very slowly. What we do is we remove the pressure cooker from the heat and place it under the running tap of cold water, making quite sure that the cold water does not reach the toggle or the safety valve. Once the pressure has been released, you can move the toggle. When you open the pressure cooker, open it away from you without leaning over it so that you are not burnt by the steam. And then your samp and beans are cooked, and you can then add salt to them for flavoring, which you didn't add before because it retarded the cooking process. Now I'm going to start a pot roast. Pot roasting is a combination method where you are using the roasting or the frying to sear and brown the meat, and then you stew it in a small amount of liquid to soften the meat. The meat that you use in pot roasting is the slightly tougher meat. So here we have a nice piece of silver side, and you must be very, very careful to retain the weight of the meat so that you can calculate the time that it should be pot roasted. Take your meat, rinse it off, and dry it with kitchen paper. Pat it dry. Place it in the hot fat. Turn the meat over once it's brown. This process will take about 15 minutes while you brown all the sides of the meat. Please note that I'm using a very heavy cast iron pot with a very heavy bottom. This keeps the heat evenly distributed. Do not poke the meat with the fork, as this allows the juices to escape and makes the meat or roast dry. Just use the fork to help turn it. Once the meat is completely brown, remove it from the large pot. And pour off the excess oil. Return the meat to the pot. Add a cup of beef stock. To this, I'm going to add some chopped up onion, a bay leaf, and some peppercorns. Place the heavy, tightly fitting lid over the roast. Turn it down to low. And you can now calculate how long the roast is going to cook. This roast weighed 1.3 kilograms. And the time is 30 minutes per 500 grams plus an extra 30 minutes. So the roast must cook for an hour and 10 minutes plus an extra 30 minutes, so it must cook for an hour and 40 minutes in total. I'm going to demonstrate the various methods of steaming. Steaming is a method of cooking, a moist method of cooking, where the food is only touched by the steam rising off the water. It must be remembered that steam is at a temperature of 110 degrees Celsius. It is a quick method used for tender pieces of fish, tender pieces of chicken, and also for cooking of most of your green and yellow vegetables. We really only boil cereals and potatoes and eggs in boiling water as such. Here I have pieces of fish, one in a sifter, one in a colander, and one on a plate. And you can use any one of these methods of steaming, depending entirely on which piece of equipment you have available. The fish and the sifter, I'm going to place over boiling water. The water must not touch the bottom of the sifter. Replace the lid so that the steam, not too much of the steam escapes. Here I'm going to place the colander in a larger pot. Once again, the bottom of the colander is not touching the boiling water, and the lid goes over the top. And then finally, I'm going to place the plate over a saucepan of boiling water, cover the fish with some greaseproof paper, and put the lid back on. When cooking rice, make quite sure that your rice is washed. Pour the water off and place the rice in a pot of boiling water. And replace the lid. One of the other utensils that we have in the laboratory is a double boiler. It is a pot constructed so that a slimmer pot will fit into it. This can also be used for steaming, where you place whatever it is that you're going to cook in the upper pot, and you have boiling water in the lower pot. For normal steaming, some people steam their rice or their vegetables. You would make quite sure that the amount of water that the amount of water in the lower pot does not touch the bottom of the upper pot. This would ensure that the temperature in the upper pot was at 110 degrees Celsius, which is what is recommended for normal steaming. If you are, however, working with eggs, particularly egg custards, you do not want the temperature to go up to 110 degrees Celsius. So you make quite sure that there's enough boiling water in the lower pot to cover the top pot very well, and that keeps the temperature at the temperature of normal boiling water, which is 100 degrees Celsius. I'm going to demonstrate the use of a pasta pot for the cooking of pasta. The modern pasta pots are double pots. You have your normal pot at the bottom, which you half fill at least with boiling water, and then you have your upper pot, which has many, many holes in it. Once the water is boiling, you put your pasta into the boiling water. Replace the lid and bring the pot back to the boil as quickly as possible. Pasta is cooked for 15 to 16 minutes until it is al dente, Italian for soft to the tooth. Do not overcook your pasta. It must not be mushy. I'm going to demonstrate deep fat frying. There are two other methods of frying which I will also demonstrate, where you use lesser and lesser amounts of fat, shallow fat frying and sautéing. But this is deep fat frying. Here we have a deep fat fryer and we have a frying basket which we use for making chips. Just remember that you can lift this up and turn it round, and then the oil can drip back into the pot. Please remember that burning oil can catch alight very easily. Never throw water or salt or baking soda onto the burning oil. Try to prevent oxygen getting to it by putting a baking tray over it. The oil is hot enough. If you're not sure about the temperature of your oil, take a small piece of potato and drop it into the fat. It must bubble and rise up almost immediately to float on the oil. Make quite sure that your chips are dry by patting them with kitchen paper or with a dishcloth, a clean dishcloth, and then place them in the hot oil. The bubbles are the water in the potatoes turning into steam and bubbling up through the oil. If you place too many chips or too much food into a deep fat fryer, it will boil over, which is very dangerous. You can move the basket a little bit to turn the chips over, get them to move in the fat. Remember that chips cooked in a fast food outlet, the chips are half fried, and then as they are ordered, so they are browned or finished off and then served to the customers. If you have large quantities of chips that you need to do, this is what you can do. This is a very fast method of cooking. All frying are fast methods of cooking, and it's known as dry cooking because no water is involved in the cooking method whatsoever. Because the chips were thinly sliced, they have not taken very long to cook. You rest them on those handles so that they can drip, the oil can drip off. You do not want your chips to be very brown. They must be just a very pale golden brown. And then once the oil has dripped off, you will turn the chips out onto absorbent kitchen paper to absorb as much of the oil as you possibly can. The next use of a deep fat fryer is for the making of donuts, fritters, deep fat fried chicken. And here we don't use a frying basket because the soft batters that are around the various fritters and pieces of food actually go through the mesh of the basket and become hooked. So for this, we remove the frying basket and we place our fritters, these are sweet corn fritters, directly into the fat. Use 2 spoons to put the fritters in the oil. Be careful not to overload your deep fat fryer. Make quite sure that the temperature is correct, that the fritters hit the bottom of the pot and rise up immediately. Here we have what is known as a slotted spoon. It is a large kitchen spoon with holes cut into it, which we use when we want to drain food, either food that has been cooking in water or, as here, food that is cooking in oil. We use it to turn the fritters over so that they brown on both sides. Once the fritters are a good golden brown color, remove them from the oil, drain them well with the spoon, and then place them on absorbent kitchen paper to remove as much of the oil as you possibly can. Remember, when keeping fritters warm in the warming drawer, do not cover them with a lid, as the condensing steam makes them soggy. The method I'm going to demonstrate now is shallow fat frying. It's done with cooking oil between 1/2 to 2 centimeters deep in an ordinary frying pan. I'm going to demonstrate the frying of an egg just to renew your memories. Break your egg with the back of a knife onto a saucer. Make quite sure that there is no shell or any other particles in the egg. Tilt the frying pan slightly so that the egg doesn't run too far. Place the egg in the oil. Please note that the oil is not over hot. The noise that the egg is making as it goes into the oil is a very gentle hiss. Once the egg white or albumin has cooked a little bit, now you're going to use an egg lifter to scoop the fat over the yolk of the egg to make it go cloudy. The egg cooks very quickly, so do not overcook it. Loosen it. Lift it up over the pan. Allow the oil to drip off and place it on the plate. Now, the next method of frying is we use the word to saute, which means that we use very little fat in the pan. We usually use margarine or butter, although we can use oil. You heat it up, and it's used to soften mushrooms, garlic, onions, celery, just to cook it enough to soften it and to make it glassy. Do not allow the margarine to burn or go brown. Place your chopped onions into the fat. Once again, use your egg lifter. Turn the heat down. You don't want your onion to become too brown. You just want the onion to become soft and shiny. Remember that both margarine and butter have protein in them, and this is why they are inclined to burn brown when you overheat them. You can either keep your onions white or pale cream, or you can fry them until they start going brown, which is caramelizing the onions, and you create a nutty flavor to the onions for whatever dish you are going to use them for. These onions are nearly ready. Just a pointer, when you are making a minced dish like spaghetti bolognese or the base of cottage pie, and it says that you must fry or brown your onions before you add the mincemeat to it. Do not do that in a frying pan. You must fry and brown your onions in a saucepan so that when you add the mince and the tomato sauce and the stock, that there is actually enough room for that all in the one saucepan, and then you can put the lid on it and cook it slowly once it has all been mixed together. Do not start a meat dish that has a number of ingredients in a frying pan. Fricassee is a word used to describe the cooking method a double cooking method, a combination cooking method for a small piece of meat or fish. It's rather like pot roasting, excepting that pot roasting is used for large pieces of meat. Here I have a chicken thigh, which I am going to fry until it's brown on both sides. And I'm going to use a pair of tongs to turn it so that I don't pierce the chicken and lose the juices. This frying here is actually to develop the flavor in the chicken, and it cooks the outside of the chicken, but it doesn't cook the inside of the chicken. Once the chicken is brown, I'm going to add a small quantity of water to the pan. Place a lid over that and allow the steam and the water to finish the cooking process until the piece of chicken is cooked. The lid of the frying pan should keep as much of the steam in the pot as possible.